There's obviously been a lot of stuff in telly and that now about sort of creepy men making women's life a misery. I think if you've got the power to do something about that, you need to use it. Many years ago, I was on a show and a cameraman thought it was funny to put the camera up a makeup woman's skirt, and it's got big laughs in the studio. I wasn't in the studio, but I found her crying in a room and she told me about it, and I asked around. And because I was big time comedian, I was able to say, well, look, either he goes or I go. And basically, I don't want to get anyone sacked, but I did get him sacked. And I tell that story not to make myself sound like some big hero and good guy, but just that I had the power and I did something. I think when you hear these stories, there are people who have the power who don't seem to have done anything, and that is unacceptable. So yeah, I think the best thing that's probably happened to me in the last 10 years or so is that I got a bus pass. Free. I can use bus, train, whenever. Actually, it has to be after 9:30. I once arrived at the tube station about 5 minutes early and just walked up and down waiting, looking at my watch like an expectant father. I wasn't going to waste that money. Anyway, I was on the tube in London, and this is the first time it's happened to me. It's quite significant. A woman offered me her seat because of my advancing years. And I didn't take it, but I could feel the pain of that for about 2 or 3 days afterwards. So a friend of mine told me that the best thing to aid sunbathing and for getting a nice tan was olive oil. So I lay on the beach in Eastbourne, actually, on a bank holiday Monday, and it was steaming hot. I could feel myself burning, so I thought, obviously I don't have enough oil on. So I was basically self-basting. And I had a gig that night, doing a stand-up gig at a local pub down there. And I remember lifting up my T-shirt and showing it to the audience, and they all went, whoa. Anyway, I ended up in hospital in Kingston that night, in A&E with whatever it was, degree burns, and they were all quite concerned about me. And the next gig I was at, my ankles had swollen up so much because of the sunburn that they had beer in a sink with ice, and I had to sit with my feet in the sink so I could get my ankles down so that I was able to put my shoes on before I did the gig. Don't use olive oil for sunbathing. My son, who's 13, is a bit of a prankster. He keeps us entertained at home. He told us that there was a leak in the toilet, and we went in very concerned, and he just put a leak of the vegetable on top of the toilet. There's a lot of that stuff going on. But I was driving with him, and I had to go to a very narrow space, and I felt the car touch it, and I thought, oh no, hopefully that's just like the rubber bit or the bumper or whatever. But I got back, and he said to me, have you seen the car? And honestly, there was a scratch on it this big. And I'd had the car about a week, and my stomach knotted up, and I felt awful. And after about 20 minutes of anguish, he pointed out to me that that was a sticker that he'd got free with the Beano that he'd put on the car, and it looked absolutely perfect. And I never got to angry. I was so impressed that he'd done that. So yeah, it's a laugh a minute. I know that a lot of people think woke politics is oppressive for comedians, and it feels like terribly weighing them down. For me, it's been educational, to be honest. I did a song on a TV show probably about 2005, and it was investigated by Ofcom because there was a complaint about it, that it was homophobic, and Ofcom looked at it and decided that it wasn't. And I watched it several years later, and it absolutely was. And I would never, ever write that now, not because I'm frightened to get into trouble, but because I think I'm a better person, basically. And so Ofcom was wrong, and so was I. Whenever I do stand-up, I always talk to the audience a lot. And I did a gig at the end of 2024, and I was talking to this woman in the audience, and I said, "What's your name?" And she said, "I can't believe you asked me that. Don't you remember me? I was your stalker for 7 years." And the audience couldn't quite believe it. And I looked and I went, "Oh, yeah, well, you've changed your hair. I didn't recognize you." And we talked for a bit about the old stalking days. And at the end of it, I said, "So what do you do for a living now?" She said, "I've retired." And I thought, how old am I that my stalker has retired? So I used to get some strange contact with fans. Someone sent a novel that they'd written, which was about them shooting me, tracking me down and shooting me. And I wasn't allowed to read it by my management because it was so scary, apparently. But they insisted on getting in CID, so sort of plainclothes policemen in an office. And they talked to me about it. And I said, "Look, I don't think, I wouldn't make a fuss about it. I mean, who's got a gun, Who's got access to a gun?" And they said, "Well, we found out this woman is a soldier." And I thought, she might have access to a gun. I said, "Yeah, well, maybe we should do something about it." So they met her off the plane at an airport and took her into a side room and talked to her. And she apparently was very apologetic about it and said it was just a bit of fun. And she promised not to shoot me, and they accepted that. She wanted, I think, to meet up with me to apologise properly. They thought that was a bad idea, and probably it was. So I know when you say the word poetry, people think, "Oh, no, I'm not interested in that." But honestly, there's so much brilliance. Just think of song lyrics that have really stuck in your mind and stuff like that. It's all poetry, really. And on the Poetry Podcast, I'm like a guy who stands outside this cave with a torch and says, "Come with me, we'll go past all the rubbish, boring bits, and I'll show you the really good stuff. And you'll be surprised how much you like it." And someone said to me, "Why are you talking about poetry in the sun?" And I hate that kind of stereotyping of what a sun reader is like. I know there'll be sun readers who would love the Poetry Podcast and would start reading poetry. Just like people say to me, "I'm surprised you like poetry." Don't be fooled by the accent. There's a lot more going on inside people than everyone thinks. And I would urge everyone to try it. There is a real special thing that goes on in your body when you read poetry. I read poetry for half an hour, and afterwards I feel like I've been to the gym or something. I've got that glow. I was at Birmingham Polytechnic, which was, there'll be people who don't know what they are, but they were sort of nearly universities, but not quite, packed with working class people. And we had a teacher there, and he loved the poetry of William Wordsworth. And he wouldn't even read from it. He remembered it. He knew it off by heart. He was a working class bloke from Derbyshire, and he would stand at the front of the class and just recite this stuff. And I remember feeling like some sort of chemical response in my body. And I thought, "Oh God, I didn't think poetry was like this." And I didn't think people like him liked it. I thought it was a sort of posh thing, which it absolutely isn't. So I like to think I'm sort of carrying on his tradition and saying to people, if you just give me 10 minutes, don't listen to the whole podcast, give me 10 minutes, and honestly, I can win you over. I really think I can win you over.